All right, there we go. Hello, college sports fans. It's the college sports super fan. We've got a huge matchup to get into here. Top five showdown. Number five, Indiana on the road against number two, Ohio State. So let's get into it. Let's just set the stage for this huge matchup. I already made a video yesterday. You can go check it out where I went over 15 other big college football. All right. 15 other big college football games this weekend that are going to be huge, that are going to matter for the standings, that are going to be just fun games overall. This is the biggest game of the week. So let's get into it. Ohio State is now an 11-point favorite at home. They were 13 and a half, 14-point favorites. That number has decreased a little bit as more people have been placing money on Indiana. So, here's the problem for the Indiana Hoosiers if they lose. I was taking a look back over their schedule. I knew it was a very weak schedule, but it's looking weaker and weaker as the season goes on. Indiana's strength of schedule, which is a key indicator for getting teams into the college football playoff, is not very good. Let's say they lose to Ohio State, and let's say that they lose by about 2 touchdowns, let's just say. They lose by 14 points on the road here. And then let's say they dominate Purdue, who's only 1-9, so that should happen. They will finish the regular season 11-1. The Big Ten championship game would be a rematch between number one Oregon and likely number two Ohio State. Indiana, if you look at their strength of schedule, yes, they would be 11-1, but it's not good. The best team that the Hoosiers have beat, technically, up to this point, is Washington, who's only got 6 wins. There's potential for Michigan State, Nebraska, and Michigan to all reach 6 wins as well, but none of that is guaranteed. I do think the Wolverines do beat Northwestern this weekend and get to 6-5, but none of that is guaranteed at all. If that's the case, Indiana's going to have an extremely weak schedule. And do you really let a team in who's 11-1 with that bad of a schedule, with the only great team that they've played all year that they've lost to, and you're going to leave out other teams who, yes, might be 10-2, let's just say, like, an Ole Miss or a Tennessee or an Alabama, might all be like only 10-win teams, but they've all played much tougher schedules. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. So that'll be an interesting decision there. If Ohio State loses, that also opens up an interesting perspective because then they would be 10-2. The Big Ten championship game would be between Oregon and Indiana. Indiana would absolutely be in, assuming they beat Purdue as well, regardless of the result in the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State would likely crush Michigan, finish the year 10-2. Would you let in Ohio State in over a lot of those other teams I just mentioned? When, if that's the case, then the only great team that they've beaten is Penn State. And then it even raises questions about Penn State. Would you even let Penn State in with schedule they've had? So that all raises questions about this game. But let's get into the actual matchup real quick. Let's start with Indiana, where the Buckeyes defense, which has been a great passing defense, they're going to need it against Curtis Rourke. Curtis Rourke has 2,410 passing yards. He's got nearly 72% completion percentage. He has 21 touchdown passes and 4 interceptions, and he hasn't really done much on the ground. He is a pure pocket passer. At running back, they've got a deep variety of options. Starting with Tyson Lawton, he's got 508 yards. That's 4.8 yards per carry and 9 touchdowns. They also have Justice Ellison, who has 686 yards, which is 5.7 yards per carry and 9 touchdowns. So he's the main running back. And then Elijah Green, who only has 186 rushing yards, but that is 7.2 yards per carry and 5 touchdowns. So Green kind of gets in the mix to give these other guys some rest as well. The receiver core, also really good for Indiana. Elijah Surratt has 685 receiving yards, 6 touchdowns. Omar Cooper has 527 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he's got a rushing touchdown. And then even Keyshawn Williams, 341 yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. On defense, linebacker Aiden Fisher has been a beast this season, one of the best defensive players in the entire Big Ten, if not one of the best in the country, with 93 tackles. That leads the team. We also have Mikhail Kamara, who has 10 sacks and 3 fumble recoveries, and then Amare Farrell has 4 interceptions. So all those categories all lead the team, but the problem with Indiana's defense compared to Ohio State's defense is it's more top heavy. Ohio State's defense is very loaded top to bottom, and they have a lot more depth than Indiana has. And as for Ohio State, quarterback Will Howard, he could have a really good game here because Indiana's passing defense has been giving up on average over 180 yards per game. So this could benefit Ohio State with Will Howard if he has a great game. 2,484 yards with a 73% completion percentage, 24 touchdown passes and 5 interceptions, plus 6 rushing touchdowns. He's only got 1 lost fumble. The fact that he can pick up yardage on the ground gives him that extra element we did not see with Kyle McCord with Ohio State last season. At running back, they've got a great two-headed monster. Quinshawn Judkins has been fantastic with 723 yards. That's 6 yards per carry, 8 rushing touchdowns with only 1 fumble, and 102 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown. And Travion Henderson has 662 yards, which is 7.4 yards per carry, and 5 touchdowns with 105 receiving yards as well. So this is one of the best running back duos in the country. At receiver, they're loaded. Freshman superstar Jeremiah Smith could be a generational talent. Has 865 yards and 9 touchdowns with only 1 fumble on the year. And he's also got a rushing touchdown. Emeka Egbuka has 612 yards and 8 touchdowns, so he's going to be an easily first-round pick at wide receiver in the NFL draft. And Carnell Tate, next man up, 457 yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. He's really, really good. He's got a ton of talent as well. On defense, this Ohio State defense is more well-balanced. You'll hear from the stats, they're not as top-heavy as Indiana is. Sonny Styles has 48 tackles, which leads the team, and he also has 4 sacks. JT Tuamolau has 5 sacks, which leads the team, and Davison Igbenosum and Denzel Burke each have a pair of interceptions, and Igbenosum's interception against Penn State was unreal, if you remember that one. So the Ohio State defense is more loaded. They've got tons of other great players I didn't even mention there that are all really, really, really good. Whereas Indiana, they're more reliant on their top guys. Here's the history of this series. This is where it gets kind of sad for Indiana. Ohio State leads the all-time series 79-12 with 5 ties, and they're on a 28-game winning streak over the Hoosiers. 28-game winning streak. The last time Indiana beat Ohio State was in 1988 at home, and the score was 41-7. They actually beat them in 1987 too, so that was back-to-back times. But besides that, Buckeyes have absolutely just beyond dominated the history of these two Big Ten teams. Here's my prediction for this game. I think Ohio State just has way too much talent, and the fact that they're at home with everything that's on the line, don't want to risk losing this game and ending up 10-2 and then having your strength of schedule compared to all these SEC teams that are also trying to get in too. It's probably not going to be a good outcome for Ohio State. I think they win this game by 7. Indiana is super talented. They've got a great head coach in Kurt Cignetti. He is the guy. He's got to keep building Indiana. But Ohio State just has way too much. I think they destroy Michigan next week. They're going to find themselves 11-1 to finish the season and go to the Big Ten championship game to get a rematch with number 1 Oregon, which will likely be a matchup of number 1 and number 2 teams in the country, which will be pretty crazy. I think IU crushes Purdue. Again, they're 1-9. They're probably going to lose tonight to Michigan State and be 1-10. I'd be very surprised if Purdue won that game. Even if they did, it's not going to make a difference. Indiana's going to crush them, and they're going to finish 11-1 as well, but they won't have the quality wins. They won't have beaten anybody that's above 6 wins this season. So with an 11-1 record with no conference championship, is that really good enough to make the college football playoff? My prediction is they probably will just barely let Indiana in, and they're likely going to have to go on the road to play a SEC team, maybe an Ole Miss, maybe a Georgia on the road in the college football playoff. So that's my prediction there. I think Ohio State's going to win this game by 7. If Ohio State dominates Indiana, Indiana might risk missing the college football playoff. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. If you like this video, be sure to share and subscribe and give it a thumbs up as well. Thank you all so much for watching the College Sports Superfan.